What do you get when you come across a magical house in the middle of Colombia? A whole bunch of wonderful, good Disney characters. The Madrigal family is filled with different types of people, and although everyone is good, there are still different levels of morality. So we have to ask, which character is the most pure? I'm Kyle with Wicked Binge, and this is ENCANTO, Good to Most Good. Now, because ENCANTO has such a small cast and there's no real villain in the movie, we can't really divide the characters into our normal tiers. So instead, we're gonna rank them from well-meaning but flawed to the most pure and noble. So here is the family Madrigal from good to most good. Starting out with our least good family member, we have Abuela Alma, Mirabelle's grandmother. Now, just so we're clear, we can't really call Alma a villain. She's definitely not. However, someone has to be at the bottom of our list, and there's no denying that Alma is the root cause of the film's conflict. As the opening song says, Abuela runs the show. Being the head of the household, Alma was the one to lead her family into using their gifts to help their community. While this was a selfless desire, it also led to her instilling an expectation of perfection within her family, putting a ton of pressure on them to never make a mistake. What's more, when it comes to characters like Mirabelle, she'd rather have them out of the way in order to keep her family's image of perfection. It gets to the point where Alma cares more about her family's magic than her family itself. Even if it's unintentional, she clearly sends a message that anyone who doesn't do good with their gift is a burden on the family. She also blames Mirabelle when things start to go wrong, without giving Mirabelle a chance to even defend herself. Alma was even willing to forget about her son, Bruno, when his gift proved to be more of a negative than a positive.
We don't talk about Bruno!
What if you didn't understand what he saw?
Thankfully, by the end of the movie, Alma is able to realize her mistakes once she sees the result of all her pressure. She's genuinely remorseful and is able to make a change for her family's sake. It's also made clear that her need for perfection comes from the deeply rooted trauma of her losing her husband and home, and the fear of this happening again. Alma is a heavily flawed character, and while it's clear she loves her family, it takes her a while for her to realize that perfection isn't needed nor is it required in order for someone to receive family love and pride. For these reasons, we had to rank her at the bottom of our list. Next up, we have Isabella, Mirabelle's oldest sister. With the power to make flowers bloom everywhere, Isabella is considered perfect and the golden child, the most graceful of the family.
Did someone say flowers?
Taking after her abuela, Isabella very much shares the mindset that those who don't have a good gift to offer are a burden. She has a lot of friction with Mirabelle, and like Alma, Isabella sees Mirabelle's attempts at helping as just being in the way. She has an air of being somewhat stuck up and can be pretty rude to her youngest sister. She even tells Mirabelle that she hates her after she ruins her fiancé's proposal attempt. We will say though that it's not like Mirabelle helps matters. Both share the blame when it comes to the friction between them. Additionally, much of Isabella's personality and mindset not only comes from her grandmother's influence, but also the expectation that she must be perfect. Isabella put so much effort into being perfect, in fact, that she was willing to marry a man she didn't love just to please Abuela and her family. While she may seem like a bit of a princess, she cares about her family just as much as everyone else. She was even willing to forgive Mirabelle for everything after she helped her discover a new side of her powers and encouraged her to let loose with flowers that weren't beautiful and perfect. As such, we felt that we could rank her just a bit above her grandmother. Next, we have Camila. He's Mirabelle's cousin who has the ability to shapeshift. Being a teenager, he is one of the more mischievous members of the family. He'll often use his shapeshifting to be sneaky, like when he shapeshifted into his sister to get extra portions at breakfast. He also uses his shapeshifting to taunt and tease people occasionally, like when he transformed into his cousin's fiancée and made kissy faces at her. We should also note that he uses his shapeshifting for plenty of good as well. During the opening number, we see him shapeshift into one of the women of the town and offer to take care of the woman's baby so that she can get some rest. He's also incredibly friendly to the townsfolk in general, greeting each one individually when they come for his little brother's gift ceremony. While he may be immature, he also has a good heart. Next is Pepa, Mirabelle's aunt and Felix's wife. She can control the weather with her mood, and while this is normally a positive power, her tendencies to be overly emotional can result in some pretty crazy weather. It's very easy for her to worry or get stressed out, and thus cause both her mood and the weather to flip on a dime. Because of this, she tends to put her family on edge and make them feel like they have to keep her calm. though it's not like she does this on purpose. She does at least try to control her emotions, even if she usually fails. Still, beyond all the anxieties and thunderstorms, she does care deeply about her family and wants to see them be okay just as much as anyone else. We should also note that while she did hold a bit of a grudge against her brother, Bruno, for ruining her wedding day, it didn't take long for her to forgive him once he explained himself. Next is the always listening Dolores. She's another one of Mirabelle's cousins, and thanks to her enhanced hearing, she knows everything about everyone. Much like her mother, she has a power she can't always control. As such, it'd be unfair to call her an eavesdropper or a gossip. In fact, we see that she does try her hardest to stay silent when she hears about Bruno's final vision regarding Mirabelle. When Dolores does finally break and spill the beans, it's not done maliciously or to get attention. She just can't hold it in any longer. Funnily enough though, she was able to keep bigger secrets, being the only one who could hear Bruno within the walls. She only told Mirabelle about what she heard instead of revealing his hiding spot to Alma and the rest of the family. She was also willing to keep her own secret crush on Isabella's fiancé hidden away, both because she didn't want to hurt Isabella and because she thought that Mariano marrying Isabella was what was best for the family. As such, she allowed herself to suffer in silence. It takes a selfless person to do that. Speaking of the suave fiancé, Mariano is actually next. We don't have a whole lot to say about him, as he's only in the film for a couple scenes. His attempted proposal to Isabella, and the ending when he learns about Dolores' feelings. He's kind, caring, and even tried to offer the family a gift of his own through his attempted song performance. Next we have Felix. Being one of two men that married into the family, he's Mirabelle's uncle and Pepa's husband. In the latter role, Felix is the one who balances his wife out, often being the one to calm her down. We see him show his love for her throughout the film, despite all her flaws, and it's clear he has a lot of affection for her. Although he very much fits into the category of the fun uncle, we can't call Felix irresponsible. He's often keeping an eye on his son, making sure that he doesn't get into too much trouble. Towards the end of the film, we also see Felix protecting his youngest son from the Madrigal home when it starts to fall apart. It should also be noted that while his wife argued against it, Felix was willing to talk about Bruno when Mirabelle asked him to. As such, he comes off as a pretty honest guy, as well as being fun-loving and caring. While he may not have a power of his own, he's certainly one of the brighter members of the family. Next we have both of Mirabelle's parents, Juliette and Augustine. For her power, Juliette can heal people's injuries with her food. As for Augustine, while he is pretty accident-prone, that doesn't stop him from being active within the family as he tries to do his part. Both parents care a lot about their three daughters, being especially sympathetic towards Mirabelle and her struggles within the family. Both try to convince Alma to not be so hard on Mirabelle, showing that they're not only protective, but they also don't look down on Mirabelle for being powerless, and instead see her as just as special as anyone else. Unfortunately, for Juliette, this could maybe come off as her trying to dismiss her daughter's feelings with an influx of positivity and hugs. Yes, she clearly tries to make her daughter feel loved and special, but she seems to struggle with addressing Mirabelle's actual feelings, and instead just repeatedly tells her that she's perfect just the way she is. It's a good message, sure, but it wasn't what Mirabelle needed at that moment. Her husband, meanwhile, was a bit more active than his wife. When he learned of Bruno's final vision from Mirabelle, he immediately tried to hide it. This was dishonest, but he only did it because he didn't want to risk Mirabelle being hurt or being seen as something for the family to be afraid of. He also makes up for this moment of dishonesty when he confronts Alma about how she treats Mirabelle, being much more firm than his wife. Neither parent is perfect, but we do see that they try their best and have the best intentions with all they do. And that's what counts. Next, we have the youngest member of the family, Antonio. Although we can't quite give him the title of most good character, as there are a few others who do more within the story, Antonio is certainly the most pure. He's the closest to Mirabelle, looking up to her and seeing her more as a sister than a cousin. Because of this bond, Antonio deeply sympathizes with Mirabelle and her struggles due to not having a gift. Even though he wants a magic power like the rest of his family, he also doesn't want to leave her behind. He's one of the few people who doesn't like Mirabelle as a burden, and unlike Mirabelle's parents, he also doesn't dismiss her feelings. He wants to help her, and even offers up his room to her without hesitation when Mirabelle and Bruno need a space for his visions. Antonio also falls into the trope of friend to all animals, once he gains the ability to speak to them, which just further adds to how pure he seems to be. Just outside our top 3, we finally get to the film's protagonist, Mirabelle. She is described as imperfect, weird, and quirky, but also deeply emotional and incredibly empathetic. She cares about her family more than anything else, and is willing to hide her own feelings of hurt and her own desires of wanting to shine bright because she doesn't want to burden her family with them. It's only when she sees how much pressure the rest of her family is under that she finally breaks and not only reveals her true feelings, but the truth of the situation as well. When she first notices the cracks in the Madrigal home and learns that there's a chance their miracle could go out, she takes it upon herself to try and figure out what's going on.
I will save the magic.
Although this is done for mostly selfless reasons, there's also a sense that Mirabelle is also doing it to prove herself and show that she can be useful to her family. Because she is a bit headstrong and determined to prove her worth, this can sometimes make her come off as being a bit stubborn or careless. This is especially evident in that her attempts to learn the truth sometimes cause her to accidentally create more cracks within the house. And while we know she isn't risking the safety of her family on purpose, it is a bit concerning that she barely puts a second thought into the risks she's taking. Regarding the friction she has with her sister, Isabella, we should also note that Mirabelle can come off as a bit judgy at times, dismissing Isabella's problems and feelings just because it seems like she has the perfect life on the surface. Thankfully, she quickly corrects herself when she learns the truth. Ultimately, truth is what symbolizes Mirabelle the best, as she's the only one willing to truly confront her grandmother's harmful mindset head-on, and thus is the one to lead her family into making a change for the better. All in all, she's a pretty great Disney protagonist, flaws and all. Getting the bronze medal of good is the strong and buff Luisa. With her gift of super strength, she takes it upon herself to carry everyone's burdens and never complains. Well, outside of her solo song, that is. Which is a total bop, by the way. While all the Madrigals do something to help their town, it's evident that Luisa does the most. She has a whole list of chores that she does daily, from rounding up donkeys that have gotten loose to fixing houses and setting bridges. As tired as she gets, Luisa still pushes to remain the strongest. Not out of pride, but because she doesn't want to let anyone down. Even when she starts to lose her powers and is emotionally distraught, Luisa still tries to do what she can to help. She puts her whole heart into helping and being her family and community's strength. And because of her hard work ethic and her soft heart, we had to give her the bronze medal. Earning the silver medal of good is the late Pedro Madrigal. Long ago, when he, Alma, and their 3 infants were fleeing their home, they ended up being chased down by conquistadors. Not wanting his family to be hurt, Pedro tried to stop them on his own while telling his wife to run for it, ultimately sacrificing his life for the people he loved the most. Finally, we're going to give the gold medal of good to the infamous Bruno Madrigal. Ironically enough, the so-called black sheep of the family ended up being the most good and noble. Having the gift of seeing the future, Bruno more often than not ends up delivering bad news as he warns others about what he sees. Unfortunately, it seems that the family have never heard of the phrase, "Don't shoot the messenger," as they and the rest of the village quickly begin to see Bruno as both a bad omen and someone who caused bad things to happen just by sharing his visions with others. Bruno, however, never held this against anyone. He would continue trying to help others and keep to himself when he couldn't. One notable example of this was during his sister's wedding. While yes, he told Pepa that it looked like rain, Bruno didn't do this to stress her out. Instead, he was only trying to let her know that it was okay for her to let all of her stress out and let loose with her negative weather. When it came to his final vision, instead of upsetting Alma or risking Mirabelle's happiness by sharing his vision, Bruno decided to exile himself from the family he loved so much. Living within the house walls, Bruno kept an eye on his family while keeping his distance, not wanting to hurt them anymore. But even with all this isolation and blame, Bruno never grew bitter. Bruno still tried to save Mirabelle from falling through a floor gap. Later, when she asked him to give her another vision, Bruno gave in despite his own fears, wanting to help both her and their family. Then, towards the end of the movie, Bruno tracked down Mirabelle and Alma, the latter of which he was avoiding throughout the entire film, being afraid of her rejection and disappointment, and was willing to take all the blame for the home falling apart, just so that Mirabelle wasn't shunned like he was. Although Bruno isn't the most mentally stable guy, entertaining himself with rats and making up alternative personas to combat loneliness, it's clear that he has a ton of love to give. He's willing to be brave and honest in the face of fear and rejection. And for this, we just had to give him the title of most good character in the movie. But let us know in the comments section if you agree with our ranking. and tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But most importantly, stay wicked.